Let me tell you, when I found out there were going to be new X-Men figures in the most recent Marvel CMF series, I was ecstatic. I love the X-Men, I got the original X-Men Jet, and now there's even a new one releasing next year. So I was hyped to get even more, and then 2 of the 3 were ones we got before. Oh well, guess I got even more Wolverines to review. Now, of course, I don't have every X-Men minifigure. There's the original Wolverine and Magneto that I'm missing, as well as Deadpool and the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Jean Grey, Sheriff Deadpool and Deadpool Duck. I also don't have Firestar, but I don't even know who that is, so I don't feel too bad about that. But to get back on track, I'm super excited for the new X-Jet releasing next year as well. It looks quite good, even though $80 is a little steep. The minifigures look good as well. I'm not the biggest fan of the new Magneto, but Cyclops is definitely an upgrade, and it's great to finally get Rogue, so I'm looking forward to picking that set up. I might even do a review of the original one if I can find all or at least most of the pieces and put it back together, but we'll see about that. Nonetheless, remember to subscribe to this channel if you enjoy, and I would just say, let's get into it with the most recognizable X-Man, Wolverine. The first one I want to look at is the only yellow-brown Wolverine we ever got from the 2014 X-Jet. I didn't actually own this figure for the better part of the last decade since I traded it off against some other figures I can't really remember, but the point is that I thought it was blue and yellow too. Shout out to my mate Richie for just giving me this figure, love you, but I gotta say, the brown doesn't look all too bad. I prefer the blue, but it is a nice variation from the otherwise pretty similar versions. As on most Marvel figures I've realized, we are missing leg printing, but it's not quite as annoying here since the hip is dark brown and breaks up the color monotony very well. Another factor in diversifying this minifig's color scheme is the red belt. I genuinely love the X-Men crest on it, and it is my favorite design of all the Wolverines. The chest and air printing are decent, with the brown expanding the further we go up. That same pattern repeats on the back too, which now leads us to the head. As you can see, the printing of the head has already rubbed off a little here, but I just gotta say that this helmet piece is beautiful. The paint might not be the best on it anymore, but it's still great that they made a new mold just for Wolverine that has only been used for him so far. Also, I want to say that this is the only Wolverine figure where the mouth is fully visible under the mask. The other two fucked it up with the beard, this one didn't. But I'll just show you with the next one from last year. This one immediately feels more colorful, despite the blue highlights being so minor. They kept the same shade of yellow, but everything brown is gone and be replaced by some blue. Here we can also see something that I mentioned earlier. Due to the missing leg printing and the hip also being bright light orange, the figure looks a lot emptier. The X-Men belt looks worse too, and overall the figure is just a little bland. It was nice when released because we literally didn't get a single Wolverine figure for 8 years, but now it's just not up to standard anymore. To be fair, there is some back printing and the mask is still dope, but the mouth is a little too high, which is why his whole upper row of teeth just isn't visible. This problem persists on the next version too, even though it beats the first two in every other aspect. And this is it. First thing we notice outside of all the insane details is the main color no longer being bright light orange, but rather just the standard yellow. I personally really like the little darker tone of the first two figures, but the switch made sense to coincide with all the new details. So let's just start with the legs. We finally have leg printing, and not just that, we also have toe printing. But not just that, we also have side leg printing. But not just that, we also have dual molded legs. LEGO went all out with this figure. The printing is honestly all but perfect when it comes to the transition of the yellow to the blue mold, but it's still decent. On the torso, we're introduced to black highlights now, with the belt sadly being the same as on the last Wolverine, but the arms make more than up for that. The blue shoulder pads plus the hair gives a lot more depth to the minifig, even though again, the printing is very inconsistent. Normal yellow was also chosen for the mask color, which once again also hides the upper row of teeth. It's okay, nothing to get too pissed about, but it's notable. Now though, let's move on to the next pair of minifigs, the Storms. The first one is from the 2014 X-Jet and honestly looks really good. It's based on a black outfit, which works great in contrast with her hair. You can see they poured a lot of love into this figure, highlighted by the rare occasion of leg printing. It's not a lot, but it adds to her more suggestive outfit, whatever you might think of that. The torso has this ring over her stomach which connects both parts of her dress, and it looks really dope. As you may have realized, I have no idea how women's clothes work. I make LEGO videos, what do you expect? Just below her neck, there's the same X-Men crest we saw on Wolverine's belt earlier, and it's great here too, and kinda looks like a necklace. Now, we gotta talk about a cape thingy. It's such a great piece that's made so much more interactive because of the connection to her hands. As you'll see in a second, they actually used a very similar piece on the new one, which is understandable since it just looks great. I like the face, and the red lips do add a bit of color into the whole thing. It's one of the few Marvel figures that can keep up with its current 10-year younger counterpart without any problems. And this is the new version. I love that I went with white for the primary color here. This outfit is the most iconic one, but also the fact that we have both black and white now is great. The leg printing is pretty generic and nothing too notable, but the torso is pretty good. They got rid of the necklace thing, instead you have two X's on her chest with this cool yellow stripe running down her body. I honestly think that giving her an extra shoulder piece was really smart. She does have that in a classic cartoon too, and it helps her stand out even more. Now let's get to the cloth that I mentioned earlier. It looks even better than the first version, and they did improve what little there was to improve. The face is fine, and I have to say I prefer this hairstyle. Doesn't feel quite as generic and adds some character. Also, the mohawk just looks dope. A figure that sadly didn't get a remake and will remain as its boring 2014 version until next year is Cyclops. This figure is a very cool color scheme in my opinion. We get a dark blue highlighted with bright light orange and bits of red, which looks great. The legs are again plain as can be, which is acceptable though, since we do have a variation in hip color. Above that is the same X-Men crest we saw in Wolverine earlier, attached to another red belt that even goes around the back. Outside of that, the torso is covered in some rather generic ab printing, which finally brings us to the head. It is a pretty decent looking one. Obviously on my version here, a good amount of paint has been rubbed off over the years, but the gold and red glosses still remain immaculate. LEGO was able to avoid the problem of printed skin tone not matching molded one, since this is literally the only skin shown, so the face just looks decent overall. A figure where skin tone is a completely different thing is the one we'll be looking at next, Beast. This is the only new X-Men in LEGO from the recent second Marvel CMF, and even though he isn't quite as detailed as some of the other figures from that CMF, he still looks pretty good. We'll start at the legs and move upwards to the highlight being the hair. First up, we have toe printing, amazing, I love it, and it matches his in-universe design. There's some detailing on his legs below his pants, and on the torso we have another X-Men belt. I think the yellow works better and is a nice contrast to the otherwise very blue color scheme. The ab printing being covered in fur is a nice detail, which continues onto the back as well. The face is cool, and it's nice that the alternative expression also shows his calm side. Truly, the highlight of this figure though is the hair. It's a dual molded piece and interlaces the normal blue with some black and even has his weird ears. It's phenomenal, and the fact that this piece will probably only ever appear on this minifigure makes it even more impressive. But now, let's get to our last figure for today, to our one and only X-Men villain, to one of the most interesting characters in Marvel Comics, Magneto. Magneto is one of those characters that even if the adaptation may not be good, he's a scene stealer in everything he appears in. Sadly, the figure doesn't match the character's greatness, but that is hard to do anyways. Missing leg printing isn't a good start. They could at least have given him some boots in form of dual molded legs, but I guess not. There isn't a whole lot I can talk about with the torso. It looks decent, and I wish I could have those abs at some point in my life. It doesn't even have to be at 90 like this guy. The one annoying thing though is that the skin printed on the torso once again doesn't match the head. It's too wide, and even 9 years later that problem still exists. Just like with Beast, the highlight is the head accessory. Magneto has got a helmet mold just for him that in combination with the purple printing looks simply phenomenal. And with that, let's end the video on a high note. I really hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.